Oh my god. This is seriously insane. Ezio returning in Assassin's Creed Hexe, the first screenshot of the game leaked, and a complete overhaul to the gameplay and story? You've probably heard the rumors, and you're likely skeptical, with a million questions running through your head. Like, how would they even bring Ezio back? And will the gameplay be completely different this time? And more importantly, when is the game actually coming out? Well, I'll try my best to break everything down and clear up all the confusion so there's no doubt left by the end. Let's begin. Starting things off with the main character. If you remember, almost a year ago, we got multiple leaks claiming that the main protagonist of the game would be named Elsa and that she would possess some sort of magical abilities. Now, we will get to the magical part later, but first, let me finally break this to you. The name Elsa was apparently just a placeholder, and the actual name of the protagonist is going to be Annika Adler. Similar to how Eivor was reportedly called Yora during the early development of Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and how several other characters in the franchise had temporary names before release. And it's a welcome change, because whenever I hear the name Elsa, my brain instantly jumps to Frozen. Plus, for an Assassin's Creed game specifically, it just sounded way too cliche and out of place. But here's the really interesting and honestly heartwarming part. The name Annika Adler roughly translates to Merciful Eagle, and if you've been paying attention to the franchise, then you'll immediately notice a pattern. Altair translates to the Flying Eagle, Ezio means Listening Eagle, Hayden means Young Eagle, and Arno can be interpreted as the Gifted Eagle. So after such a long time, the symbolism of the eagle finally seems to be returning to the series again. And why wouldn't it? The game is being developed by Ubisoft Montreal, the same studio behind many of the Assassin's Creed games I just mentioned. So hopefully this is a sign that the peak evolution of Assassin's Creed is finally making a comeback. And if we go even deeper into it, these names have always reflected the characters themselves and subtly hinted at their stories. Take Connor for example. His real name is Radhanagedon, and it roughly translates to something along the lines of one whose life was torn apart yet continued the path of a warrior. And that fits him perfectly. His entire story was about loss. He lost his mother, his mentor, his father, and even his village. Yet despite all of it, he never truly broke, he just kept moving forward. Even Edward's name carries symbolism. It roughly means guardian of wealth who became a great warrior. Again, subtle hints toward the journey and themes of the character. So if Annika's name truly means Merciful Eagle, then it could very easily reflect her personality and role in the story as well. Which means these tiny details, the symbolism, the layered meanings behind names might finally be making a return too. And here's another fun fact, after nearly 10 years, we might finally be getting a true assassin again. Not a hidden one, not some unofficial ally, but an actual full-fledged member of the Brotherhood. Now, this part might sound a little questionable, and at first glance, it honestly feels like cheap fan service. And trust me, I thought the exact same thing too, until I actually started connecting the dots. Let me explain. According to the leaks, Ezio Auditore da Firenze is supposedly 100% confirmed to appear in the game. But the question is, how exactly? Well, the reports claim that Ezio will be the ancestor of our main character Annika, with Annika allegedly being the granddaughter of Claudia Auditore, Ezio's sister. Now, how Claudia somehow ended up in Germany of all places is still completely unknown. Oh, and did I even mention the game itself is supposedly set in Germany? Yeah, kind of an important detail, but don't worry, we'll come back to the setting later. For now, let's wrap up the Ezio part first. The leaks specifically mentioned that Ezio won't physically appear in the game, but spiritually. And that's where things start becoming really interesting. Apparently, he could appear to the Pieces of Eden, similar to how Minerva communicated with Ezio in Assassin's Creed 2, or how the Ezio have historically communicated with assassins throughout the franchise. Another possibility mentioned in the leaks is something much closer to Altair ibn la-Ahad and his memory seals from Assassin's Creed Revelations, meaning Ezio could leave behind memories, messages, or recordings that Annika discovers throughout the story. And there are even strong hints that we might actually play as him during certain sections. I just seriously hope they don't do him dirty the way Assassin's Creed Shadows handle legacy characters where they're barely acknowledged and only referenced indirectly. But to be completely honest, the more you think about it, the more all of this weirdly starts making sense. The writers could genuinely make this work. By the end of his life, Ezio already knew an incredible amount about the first civilization. And remember what Achilles Davenport said in Assassin's Creed 3.
Of yours have been harassing the assassins for centuries. Ever since Ezio uncorked the bottle.
And when you think about it, the way Ezio hid the apple beneath the Colosseum while leaving clues for Desmond to follow centuries later, it becomes obvious that he had a deep understanding of the Pieces of Eden, which opens up a very interesting possibility. What if, similar to how Altair used the apple to glimpse the future, Ezio also saw fragments of what was to come? We already saw something similar in AC Brotherhood's ending. And because of that, he deliberately left messages behind for Annika, not just to guide her, but to preserve the spirit of the Brotherhood itself. AC Brotherhood ends in 1507, and Revelations takes place in 1512, and AC Embers happens in 1524. These are the years of Ezio's life we barely know anything about. So it's entirely possible that during that period he continued studying Ezio technology and learned far more than we ever realized. And here's the biggest clue of all. The leaks don't just say Ezio appears in the game, they also include fragments of dialogue supposedly spoken by him. And some lines are the following. There was a time when we were called demons too. Come Annika, take a leap of faith with me. There were other lines as well, but these are by far the most important ones. And the first quote especially stands out to me. Sure, it instantly reminds me of the flying machine sequence where people literally thought Ezio was some kind of demon, but beyond the joke, it also reveals something deeper. It reflects how the world perceived the assassins themselves, and that's a fascinating angle to explore. And based on all of this, I genuinely think the version of Ezio we'll see is a post-Revelations Ezio who's older, wiser, and far more reflective. And the more I think about it, the less this feels like fan service, because if the story truly revolves around the auditory bloodline, then not including Ezio would honestly feel like a massive missed opportunity. What makes this even more interesting is the parallel it creates. Ezio could become an Altair-like figure for Annika, the exact same way Altair became one for him, despite both of them being centuries apart. And what makes this dynamic even crazier is that Ezio supposedly isn't her only mentor. Recent leaks from reliable insiders like Jonathan mention another character named Wolfgang. According to the rumors, Wolfgang is a morally gray bad cop mentor to Annika early on in the story, so if you put the pieces together, we might be looking at this insane ideological clash. You have Wolfgang pushing Annika towards a darker and more ruthless path just to survive the horrors of the witch trials, while Ezio's memories act as a good cop, guiding her back to the true meaning of the creed, and it's a brilliant contrast. And if the early impressions are actually true, with some reliable sources claiming that the story is the best since AC Origins, then honestly, that gives me a lot of hope. Oh my lord, this one actually has me really hyped. Like I mentioned earlier and in a lot of my other videos, the game is expected to take place during the witch trials era. And now we've got even more clarity on the setting. It's supposedly set in Germany, specifically in the city of Würzburg. And yeah, apologies if the pronunciation is a bit off, but you get the point. Now, this is where things start to really click. If we look at it historically, it actually makes sense. The game is being described as the darkest, most gruesome, and most eerie project we've ever seen in the Assassin's Creed franchise, and Würzburg during this period fits the tone perfectly. Around the year 1626, which lines up closely with the game's rumored timeline, the city was part of the Holy Roman Empire, and this was right in the middle of the witch trials. And it's one of the darkest chapters in human history. People, especially women, but also men and even children, were accused of witchcraft and brutally executed. Burnings, torture, mass hysteria, the entire society collapsing under fear and paranoia. And what makes it even more horrifying is the scale of it. Over the span of just a few years, entire communities were destroyed with massive portions of the population wiped out. So when Ubisoft keeps repeatedly saying this will be the darkest Assassin's Creed ever, this is exactly the kind of setting that backs it up. It's hard not to believe them this time. Now, if we look at the city itself and what we've seen so far, you've got massive castles, dense medieval architecture, winding rivers, and tightly packed settlements. Visually speaking, it's basically a parkour playground waiting to happen. Perfect rooftops, vertical density, narrow streets, traversal is going to be insane. But this isn't just about the movement anymore. Annika isn't just surviving in this world, she's trying to protect it while surviving it. And that alone changes everything. Maybe the story goes back to a classic Assassin's Creed structure like rebuilding the Brotherhood, expanding influence, fighting oppression, but this time on a much darker, more brutal scale. Because imagine the tone here. Take the paranoia and mix that with Assassin's Creed gameplay and stealth elements, and it could get genuinely intense. Like, not just action intense, but emotionally heavy as well. But it all depends if they actually commit to this direction. And I'll be honest, it could be something completely different from the franchise, and I'm all down for it. Coming to the most awaited part of the video, gameplay. We all know the setting, we know the story premises, but the real question is, how will it actually play? Will there be magical elements, or is it going to stick to the modern RPG style systems? And surprisingly, according to the leaks, almost all of that has been completely reworked and overhauled. For anyone who was worried about the magical abilities aspect we discussed earlier, these concerns seem to be gone. Apparently, all of that has been removed from the game. No transforming into cats, dogs, or any creature you can imagine, and no mind control abilities either, nothing like that. Instead, the game is aiming to stay as grounded as possible, very similar in tone to Assassin's Creed Origins, while still keeping a touch of supernatural influence to the Pieces of Eden. And that's a good thing, because if there's one thing the franchise has struggled with in recent years, it's balance. The modern devices sometimes carry too much of the narrative weight, meanwhile games like Assassin's Creed Mirage felt like they were missing that layer entirely. So this could actually be the middle ground the series needs right now. Now let's talk about parkour, because this is where things get really interesting. According to the leaks, the parkour system has been completely reworked, and not just improved, rebuilt to lean much closer to the original Assassin's Creed style. If you followed earlier breakdowns of the franchise's movement systems, you will know the original games had far more control, flexibility, and animation flair compared to the newer RPG entries. And it sounds like the style might be coming back. We're talking about tree-to-tree traversal, seamless animations, tighter control, and a much more fluid movement system overall. Some leakers even described it as double jump, swing, and boom assassination, which instantly takes you back to the Ezio trilogy era where parkour wasn't just movement, it was expression. And considering the entire game is set in one major city, the map itself becomes a playground designed specifically to support this system. Now, I want to be clear, these claims are coming from leakers often associated with insider gaming and similar sources, who've had accurate leaks in the past, so while nothing is confirmed, it's not coming out of nowhere either. There was even reportedly a leaked image showing the first look at Annika, but it's been taken down repeatedly, so you'd have to search it separately if it still is circulating. But parkour isn't even the biggest change. Stealth might be the real standout here, because according to the leaks, the stealth system is being described as the best social stealth system the franchise has ever attempted, and possibly one of the best in gaming overall. And that's a bold claim. The system is set to combine the strongest elements from across the series into one unified approach, while fully using the environment to its advantage. Shadows play a major role similar to AC Shadows, allowing players to hide dynamically depending on lighting and positioning, but AI is where things get even more intense. If you mess around too much, the detection system escalates and NPCs don't just react, they organize. They hunt in groups, split up, and actively search hiding spots, shadows, rooftops, and almost everywhere. They even call out Annika directly, and since it's Assassin's Creed, all the classic tools return. Smoke bombs, darts, and a larger and deadlier Hidden Blade variant, all of it reportedly is included in the game. Even Annika's default outfit is set to be dark and grey, designed specifically to blend into shadows and environments. On top of that, NPCs may even accuse her of witchcraft depending on the context, making survival itself part of the gameplay loop. And that's where things start sounding intense. It's not just stealth anymore, it's psychological pressure. Now, combat is the area where information is still limited, which is slightly concerning because something similar happened with Assassin's Creed Mirage, where stealth was strong but combat ended up being the weakest part. Here, the only details we have suggest smaller scale encounters with a focus on being constantly hunted rather than being a dominant warrior. Almost like a survival tension system similar in feeling to the Dying Light series at night, where pressure constantly builds. There are also mentions of alchemy replacing the previously rumored magical abilities, along with psychological tactics that can affect enemy behavior, fear responses, and detection patterns. So enemies won't just fight, they will react dynamically depending on how you approach them. Still, combat feels like a 50-50 right now. It could either become something innovative and intense, or fall into the same issues as past entries. But there's still time. If the rumored release window of late 2027 is accurate, then the game is still roughly a year and a half away from launch, giving Ubisoft plenty of time to refine everything. This is one of those cases where the foundation sounds strong enough that, if they execute it properly, it could genuinely elevate the entire franchise again. And if I'm to be honest, the series needs it. So far, all the leaks and rumors are pointing toward what could potentially be Ubisoft's biggest comeback in years. The game is reportedly being developed under Vantage Studios, a team said to be focused specifically on maintaining the global reach and long-term strength of their biggest franchises. And with internal restructuring and changes in the hierarchy across development teams, there's definitely a sense that things might be heading in a new direction this time. Personally, I've got high hopes for Hexe, but at the same time, there are still a few things that need more clarity that can only really be confirmed once we get our first proper look at gameplay, which is expected later this year or possibly early next year. Until then, everything remains a speculation, but exciting speculation. I'm hyped, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it all turns out. But what do you think? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more Assassin's Creed content. I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care, and goodbye.